Welcome back to another Last Raps Baseball Talking Baseball video. Today we're joined by our guest from Mesa, Arizona, Orv Franchuk. Orv, with nearly 30 years of professional baseball experience under his belt, including time with the Oakland A's, Houston Astros, Los Angeles Angels, Los Angeles Dodgers, and Boston Red Sox. Today we're going to discuss Orv's time with the Red Sox as their hitting coordinator. Orv was part of that organization for 4 years, including in 2004 when the Red Sox won their first World Series since 1918 when they defeated the Chicago Cubs that broke the 86-year curse. I also want to apologize today for the video, as you're basically going to see Orv and only hear me from time to time asking the questions and the poor quality of the video. With that being said, the stories that Orv has and is going to share with us today, we just couldn't go back and delete the video and redo it all over again, because Orv did a great job providing us some excellent information and telling us some stories with his time with the Sox. So with that being said, please sit back, relax, enjoy, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again with Orv in the near future. So thanks again for watching. Here comes our interview with Orv Franchuk. All right, welcome everybody. I'm here with Orv Franchuk, the former hitting coordinator for the Boston Red Sox, and he's at his home in Mesa, Arizona, and we're talking baseball tonight. Welcome, Orv.
Thank you, Fred, for having me. I'm kind of looking forward to a nice little chat.
Well, we asked Orv to come on and talk about his days as the hitting coordinator for the Boston Red Sox, and obviously culminating with a 2004 World Series championship for the first time since 1918. And so, Orv, I guess I want to start off by asking you, how did you land in the job as a hitting coordinator for the Boston Red Sox? You'd been in pro ball for a number of years, but obviously becoming a hitting coordinator is a feather in the cap for hitting coaches. And how did that happen?
Well, initially with the Angels for 8 or 9 years, and then I went over to Oakland. Oakland, worked for the A's I was in my 8th year or 7th year, and I got a call from Billy Beane, and believe we were outside by the pool. Can't remember what time of year it was. I think it might have been during the winter months. But anyway, so he goes, Orv, how's it going? Blah blah blah. He said, I was hoping you'd do a favor for me. I go, sure. What do you need? He says, Theo Epstein has called me and asked permission to talk to you regarding their hitting coordinator job. And so I said, so what'd you say? And he said, well, I said, yeah, I'd give him permission. So I'm just letting you know that he's probably going to call you in the next day or so. I said, okay. I said, just curious, is there a reason that I would think if you wanted me to stay, you wouldn't be giving him permission? He goes, no, he says, I'm just doing it as a favor. And I'm hoping that you'll have a conversation and, you can decide what you want to do, but we don't want to lose you. But I understand that it's a business. So it couldn't have been more than a half an hour, and I get a call from Theo. And so Ben Sherrington, who was his assistant at the time in player development, they were on speaker. And so the first question that we started talking, and he explained that they were looking for a hitting coordinator, and he asked me if I was interested, and I said, well, I mean, I like to listen to what you have to say first. Anyway, so he gets into the, what do you do over there with Oakland, how do you deal with the mechanical stuff, the mental stuff, the visual stuff, and all of that. And I said, Theo, I said, I don't mean to be rude, but I really am not prepared to discuss that with you, because right now I'm still in Oakland A, and we haven't discussed anything else. And it's kind of a pause, and I think him and Ben were having a little chuckle, and he goes, you know what? He says, you're right. He says, that's not probably a fair question to be asking. He says, so anyway, he says, so what's it going to take? So I said, and I highballed. I doubled what I was making in Oakland just to see what they would come back with. He says, "Let me call you right back." So he calls me right back. I'm trying to make a long story short. Anyway, the thing was, it was a very favorable amount, and all of the bells and whistles. The only thing that I wanted was big league insurance. I wanted all the bells and whistles with the big league insurance. So he said, "Well, let me call you back." So he called me right back. He said, "Well, because you were not a player or a coach in the big leagues, we're not able to give you the big league insurance." He said, "But every spring, the difference between the minor league insurance and the major league insurance, we'll just cut you a check every spring for the difference." So anyway, long story short, I accepted the amount and the contract, and that was, I believe, in 2002. I go to their instructional league in Fort Myers, and that was the beginning of my career, the 4-year career. I got a 4-year. It was a 4-year deal. He wanted to give me a 2-year deal, and I just said, "Well, if I'm gonna make a change, I've been with Oakland. I love it here. I really don't want to leave. But if I'm going to make a jump, come over there and be your hitting coordinator, I need to have 4 years to see whether or not there's progress made, or if I'm doing my job, and you want to keep me or let me go." So we agreed on all of that, and it was a great experience, the 4 years that I spent there.
So, or for the audience, some people may know what a hitting coach is, but they may not know what the role of a hitting coordinator is all about. Can you shed a little bit of light on the role of the hitting coordinator and what is expected of you in this capacity?
Yeah, well, when I came on board, they really didn't have a hitting coordinator. So Victor Rodriguez was kind of an acting hitting guy and kind of organized that. He was kind of in charge of that, but really didn't feel like he had the experience to do that. Although he's a big league hitting coach right now with Cleveland. I felt uncomfortable coming there in that environment because I felt like I was taking Victor's job away from him. But Theo explained to me, he said, "That's not the case." And I had a good chat with Victor. We talked about it. He said, "No, man, I want you on board. I want to learn from you." Anyway, so bottom line was, a hitting coordinator, that position includes, I'm in charge of all the hitters from the Dominican, Venezuela, summer leagues, all the way from rookie ball, A ball, double A, triple A, and the big league club. I'm involved in all of, so it's around over 200 players that I'm involved with. And so it's a task, and you have to get everybody on board and kind of going in the same direction. Not kind of, you're wanting them to be doing the same thing at every level, so that when they get to the big leagues, it's not going to be a big adjustment. And so after spring training goes, I go on the road. I go home for about a week, maybe 4 or 5 days, and I go back on the road right away to be with clubs. I think it was 47 days, consecutive days on the road, and finally I got a call from Theo, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm trying to get this thing right. I'm trying to get everybody on the same page." So all of the hitting coaches and the managers, met with all of those people on a daily basis, and then try to create relationships with all of the players and get them to feel comfortable with me and to be able to talk and communicate. And so the 40 some days was a chore, but I felt like I got them going along the right track. But so that's kind of what a hitting coordinator does. He's responsible for the development of every player in the organization, all the way from Venezuela, the Dominican, all the way to the big leagues.
So with the Red Sox, every organization has different hitting philosophies. Obviously, they have different people that are in charge and running things differently. So what were some of the things that you tried to impress upon the Boston organization, maybe globally as a whole, and then maybe obviously you have some different things that might apply to specific players, but what would be something that you would maybe want to impress not just to your hitting coaches, but to the fellows that are playing as well?
Yeah, when I got there, it was Well, I early in the time that I was there, I spent quite a bit of time in the Dominican, and so I had to be real structure. I had to give them really specific structure as to what I wanted the kids doing, from tee work to front toss to base to batting practice to the mental part of the process, and that having a plan when you go to the plate, and from opposing pitchers, watching them in the bullpen, making adjustments. All of that stuff was it's kind of a general way of what I'm telling you right now, but it gets really really specific. One of the biggest things that I brought to Boston from Oakland was plate discipline, and starting in the Dominican and in Venezuela, they swing the bat. If it's close, they're going to be hacking it. They want to get to the U.S. and get to the big leagues. That's a motivation for them. So that was a big task. But at every level, we actually the 4 years, and I like to talk about this a little bit and brag and pat myself on the back. But the 4 years that I was with the Red Sox, we went up in every offensive category from through the minor leagues, from rookie ball all the way to AAA. So I felt like there was progress. The things that we needed to do were getting done, and it wasn't just me. It was everybody. I mean, the hitting coaches, the managers, the players. We had meetings, a lot of sit down meetings, a lot of video stuff. We got into some things that they had never done there before, and so it was a good experience. I'll never forget the 4 years that I spent there, and after the 4 years, they decided they wanted to go in a different direction. That was the reason they let me go. So it was like my good friend Tony Muser, who's was a manager with the Royals and who's become a really good friend, said Orv, they learned from you and they stole from you, and then they decided that they didn't need you anymore. So I don't know if that's a good evaluation or not, but it was hard for me to know that they didn't want me anymore, and I had a hard time with that.
We're joined again here with Orv Franchuk, and we're talking baseball. And Orv is taking us through his beginnings with the Boston Red Sox organization and explaining his time as a hitting coordinator with the club. And so, Orv, as you had mentioned, it was really the first time that the Red Sox had a hitting coordinator in that position. I know you've since moved on after that, but looking back as the hitting coordinator, what did you think that how the game has kind of evolved management-wise today from the time that you were there? Pretty much every team now has a hitting coordinator or a pitching coordinator or a catching coordinator. What value do you think that those positions bring to the teams?
Well, I think those positions are huge. When I was with Oakland, I think it was a year or two before I went over to Boston, I called Billy and I said, Billy, I'm just concerned that at the big league level, especially, not only at the big league level, but even maybe more so at the minor league level, you have high maintenance guys. For example, at the big league level, you have a McGuire and a Canseco, and maybe you got 3 or 4 high maintenance guys. So your hitting coach spends most of his time with those 3 or 4 guys. What about the other 10 or 11 position players that need the attention and need the time? I said, are you considering, or would you consider hiring another hitting coach? He said, well, no, we don't have. First of all, we don't have the budget or the money for that. But he said, that's a good thought. I said, that's something I'll keep in mind. So anyway, it went on after the years passed. And well, now, I mean, every organization has at least 2 hitting coaches, maybe 3. And it's just, it makes sense because there's a lot of things that have to get done. And like I say, some guys are high maintenance. Some clubs have a lot of high maintenance guys. Some clubs don't. So, and then the video part and, the mental part of the visual part now, it's come. All of that stuff is along with the cybermetric stuff. It's tough. The hitting coaches get let go a lot. They get fired. There's a lot of guys getting fired. The hitting people get fired a lot more than pitching guys do. And so there's a lot of failure. I mean, the game of baseball is surrounded by failure. There's a lot of failure involved in playing the game, but the hitting process especially has a lot of failure. And I mean, you know how that works.
When you have multiple hitting coaches and some players go home in the off season and hit with somebody else, how much of a challenge did you find getting those players to get back on the organization's philosophy when maybe they wanted to do things their own way or different than what the organization's coaches are trying to convey to them?
Well, the biggest thing for me, and something that I feel like people watching should consider, is number one, whether you're the manager, the hitting coach, or the pitching coach, or just one of the coaches on the team, try to establish and develop a relationship with your players, and that is a really difficult thing to do because it consumes a lot of time, and I think and that's what I've always tried to do over the years, and I think it comes a little bit from my teaching background, but I felt like if I could communicate and if I could get some feedback from my students or from my athletes, and had them talk to me more than me talk excuse me me talking to them, I felt like that was a good thing. I'll never forget my first year with Oakland A's. I go to big league camp, and the first day of big league camp, everybody's stretching. That was the position players and the pitchers all together the first day. And I'm watching Tony La Russa, see how he's going about his business. He made contact with every single guy during the stretch. Every single guy, he touched them, or hey, how's your wife, or how's the baby? He went to every single player, the Latin guys and the American guys. I'm thinking, well, that's the first day, but he did it every single day in big league camp, and it. They loved him as a result of that. He created a relationship with each and every one, and I think that's how you get your players to buy in and have success.
What would you use to measure players? Like, what would it be statistically that you would look at? Were you using quality at bats? Like what would be ways that you would try to evaluate your players especially at the minor league level as they advance along?
Well, I mean, progress and ability to work, the progress that they make, teachability, coachability, all of those things have to be prior to anything that's going to result in success. But I mean, as far as the actual numbers, and I mean, everything nowadays is. It's all about numbers, quality at bats, getting on base. I have a T-shirt that says teams that get on base a lot score a lot, and teams that score a lot win a lot. So on base percentage for me is a really big batting average. I mean, batting average is usually a reflection of you getting on base. I mean, obviously, the more you're on base, the better your batting average is going to be. But RBIs, getting on base, driving in runs, little things like moving runners and scoring guys from third base with less than two out. Those are all things that, at the lower levels in high school and college, I'm not sure that they spend enough time on that part of the game. And they spend so much time on mechanics. Not enough time is spent on the actual the mental, the process, the total process, the mental part, the visual part of the hitting process is huge. And so that's all starting to be a big part of the teaching and the coaching at the big league level and at the minor league level. I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit, but the other thing for me is that a lot of major league clubs now are getting real into the cybermetric stuff. And it has value, but I'm a big believer too that you have to have the eye, and you have to be able to have that gut feeling about players, and you also have to have be able to projectability of a player, projectability, but that comes from experience. And so that's why I'm not sure that the guys that come out of Harvard that are very smart and very knowledgeable, but have never played a game, are very influential nowadays on what goes on in professional baseball. And so I think that you have to have a little bit of everything. And by no means am I saying the cybermetrics part is not important. It is, but it has to be the total package for me.
Yeah, well, and another thing is that I always like to say, I got a buddy who likes to say, you got to lift the hood and check to see what's under the hood of the car, because sometimes with the player, they might have the physical tools, they might have certain things, but you lift the hood and you find out that there's all kinds of craziness going on. Maybe he's not a good teammate. Maybe he's he's got some dependency issues, whatever that might be, and he's got different things that as a player aren't going to allow him to potentially succeed long term, because some of those things are getting in the way. I don't want to mention names, but you can think of a litany of players that, hey, great talent, bad teammate. So,
right. I mean, I've been, when I was with the Angels, I was scouting. I was one of the main scouts for Canada during the summer. I would try to go across the country and see as many kids as I could. But so we're right before the draft. We're meeting in Denver. The meeting's in Denver for our area. So we all get together right before the draft, just like a week or two before the draft. We're talking about different players, and a player came up that we had all seen. Everybody. And I can't remember the player's name off the top, but there were all of the scouts other than myself. I was the only one that wanted to draft him. The other scouts didn't like him. They didn't like his tools as much, and I didn't. My tool evaluation were the same. It was the same evaluation as the other scouts. But the tool that I liked more than anything was the kid's makeup. And at that time, that wasn't a big deal. Scouts would look at a player and they'd go watch him play 2 or 3 times, and he would get signed or he wouldn't or whatever. But I think that tool is a hard tool to evaluate, because you have to really, you have to go to the church and you have to go to the school and you have to talk to friends and you have to get in the home and you have to really find out what the kid's about. And those are the kinds of guys I want on my team. And I know a lot of organizations are starting to go in that direction now. It's all about makeup, what kind of work ethic he has, what kind of grades coming through college and high school, what kind of grades he had. What are his hobbies? Is he those kinds of things. I mean, arm, speed, defense, power, and average are the 5 tools. But to me, the sixth and seventh tools, the sixth one for me is makeup. The 7th one for me is athleticism. And those are 2 tools that I'm really big on.
With the Red Sox, and I don't know about it when you were there, but I've noticed in the last few drafts, maybe not this year's draft, because who knows how it's going to look. I guess they're thinking about maybe only a 5 or a 10 round draft here in 2020. But when you were there, traditionally, at least in the last number of years, the Red Sox have picked a lot of college guys in the draft. And the guy I think of most recently, who was a high school premium pick, was Mookie Betts. He was a higher pick. They put a lot of money into him. But to me, it seems like when the Red Sox draft a high school guy, they want to insulate him with a lot of college guys. And I have my views on it, but is that something that the Red Sox would have focused on when you were there, or did they look at the type of players they want? Were they leaning toward more college guys, or did they prefer high school guys? What were your thoughts?
when I was there, they wanted the best player at the time they had their pick, whether it was a high school kid or a college kid. They wanted the best player, and they also have to look at what their needs are at the time. During for example the year of the draft. So next year, what are our needs? What are we looking at? Or in the future, we're going to lose this guy. We only have 2 years left on this guy's contract, and we're going to miss this. We're going to lose this guy. They plan ahead to try to accommodate that. But usually, most organizations they want to take the best player at the time, whether it's a pitcher, a position player, and then that's kind of how they go. I mean, unless you're really looking for somebody, and I mean that happens too. They'll just say, we're not. This might be the best player, but we need a left-handed starter. So they might try to go with a college guy, or they might look at a high school kid they really like.
Some organizations, and obviously the Red Sox aren't one, they might have a tendency to prefer to draft in a certain direction. I think of a couple organizations off the top of my head. They might prefer to go to arms, and they're better at developing arms, maybe through their organization, and they figure if we can develop the arms, we can always flip them for bats. Whereas maybe it's easier or quicker to develop an arm, get to the big league level than it is to get to a bat. Would you agree with that statement, that it's easier to develop an arm than a bat? Or do you think if a guy's got tools and talent, he's going to be able to get there just the same?
That's a tough question, Fred. I think a lot of it depends on who your people are in your organization. Certain organizations develop pitchers really, really well, and part of it is the draft, who they select, but a lot of it is the pitching coaches throughout the minor league system that really are very good at what they do, and they're all on the same page, and whatever they do, it works. And then there's certain organizations that are really good at developing position players, developing hitters. So I'm a big believer in, obviously scouting, being able to identify the right people that you want. But then for me, player development is huge. And I don't know how they're gonna do what they're trying to do in the future of getting rid of some of the minor league, a lot of the minor league clubs, and making it more like football and basketball, where you don't spend much time developing them, and they learn how to play in the big leagues at the big league level. I'm not in favor of that, but if it works, there's players that can go from college or high school right to the big leagues. There's guys that can do that, but not very often. And it's not so much ability wise; it's more just experiencing some pretty good arms. You're going to see at the big league level as a hitter, and as a pitcher, you're going to be seeing some pretty good hitters. So it's tough. Yeah.
We're joined again by Orv Franchuk, and we're talking baseball, specifically Boston Red Sox baseball. And we've talked a lot about player development, but Orv, I'd like you to ask you a little bit about the 2004 World Series championship season. It had been 80 plus years since the Red Sox had won a World Series. In fact, it was 1918 when the Sox disposed of the Chicago Cubs. So could you shed some light on what it was like to be a part of the organization in 2004 during that time?
Well, it was, the year prior to that, I believe the year prior to 2003, we were in a similar situation. If I remember correctly, a similar situation with the Yankees. And then we were ahead, and then we ended up getting beat late. And then they ended up going to the World Series, and we had to go home. But the following year was amazing. I'm on the road actually, still roving, and watching the games as much as possible. And we're down three games to none, and then we come back and beat the Yankees 4 straight. And the part that people don't remember or forget about is that was the highlight. I mean, but then we play the Cardinals in the World Series and beat them 4 straight. We swept them. Well, so it was a special year. It was special people. The Millars and the Veritex and the Big Poppy and Manny Ramirez. I mean, probably the best pure, raw, talented hitter that I've ever spent time with. His social skills were lacking. He didn't have a clue on that. But when it came to the hitting process, he was locked in. He had a really good idea. He knew how to compete. He loved competing. And so,
So I'm gonna put you on, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Should Manny Ramirez be in the Hall of Fame?
well, with his numbers, I mean, no question. I mean, here's the thing with the people that talk about the steroid stuff, and there's a lot of really really good players that put up some really good numbers and are great athletes and great players, but because they ended up getting tested and they whatever, and not to say that I'm to do the steroid thing. I'm just saying there were a lot of other players in Major League Baseball during the steroid era that never ever got tested. And so I have a hard time. And so I'm saying that like the Clemens and the Bonzes and the Manny Ramirez, for me, those guys should get put into the Hall. They should still get it put into the Hall. Call it the steroid era if you want, but they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. What he did as a player, not as a manager, but what he did as a player, his numbers and nobody's going to come close to what he's done. Played the game hard every day. I'm jumping around here.
No, I mean, I put you on the spot on the question because obviously, there's a lot of talk, and of course, the media has a role in voting some of these players in. And one of the things I'm glad to see is they now have that secondary phase to get into the Hall of Fame. And so I think this year Ted Simmons is getting in, and it's, a panel of players, ex-players, and different people that are voting. Alan Trammell was a benefit of that a couple of years ago. Jack Morris was one of those as well. And so I think I can't remember. I don't know if it was Edgar Martinez was in that vote or Harold Baines, but you have different ones over the years. Yeah, that were able to get in on that secondary vote. And so, it's sometimes people used to say with hitters still got to hit. What he was taking helps put the ball over the fence an extra 30 or 40 feet, but you still got to be able to get to the ball to be able to hit it. And, any enhancement drugs don't help you hit the ball. You still got to be able to do that. So,
exactly. The biggest thing with the steroid, and I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that the thing for me that the steroids did for the players was it helped them with their recovery. Mm-hmm. For example, they play a night game in New York and then fly all night and get to LA and play a day game. The guys that were on the juice, it didn't bother. The recovery was just like nothing. And but as far as hitting the home run and playing the game and being successful that way, I mean, I guess being able to recover is going to help you be fresh and be good that way. But as far as hitting home runs and doing things physically, I don't think it helped that much. Like you said, if you can hit, you can hit.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I know how I feel sometimes. I threw yesterday for the first time in 7 weeks, and I backed it up to 90 feet, and I felt pretty good yesterday. And then I woke up this morning, and I can't say I felt as good as I did yesterday. So
a little different.
I got to get that arm going, nonetheless, for the kids.
Just one other thing I'm going to add, Fred, to the Red Sox. The highlight when I got to Boston, my first big league camp. I come to the clubhouse and I'm looking for my locker, and there's my name. So I put my bag down, and I look over on the left of my locker, and I got Paul Yastrzemski's name above the locker. I look over to my right, and I got Dwight Evans' name next to my locker. So I got to sit between two really, really good people and really great baseball players. And the first day, first day I'm in big league camp. So Yaz is sitting next to me, and he's going, "Oh, Franchuk, there must be some Polish blood in there." Or I said, "Well, I'm Ukrainian." He goes, "Well, same stuff." So he tells me, he says, "Okay," he says, I ride the cart every day, and I go watch players. I'll go watch hitters." He said, "Today you're going to sit with me all day, and we're going to sit on the cart. I want to talk to you about what you think about hitting." So I thought, well, I don't know if I can do it. He said, "Hey, well, you better, you're going to do that." Yeah. So I told Ben Sherrington, the farm director, I said, "Hey, Ben, Carl wants me to sit on the car with him for the day. Is you okay with that?" He goes, "Yeah, whatever Carl wants, whatever he has wants." So that was kind of and then, Dewey and Dwight Evans was great. I mean, that was pretty special to be able to spend time with Yaz. Yeah. And, his son is doing really, really well, finally getting to the big leagues with the Giants.
Yeah, the grandson, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the grandson, right? The grandson, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. You mentioned Dwight Evans. There's a guy who, Jim Rice got in the Hall of Fame a few years ago, and Dwight Evans, his number. I don't know. Do you think on the secondary, should he be in the discussion?
They're close enough. Guy. And that's another story that while I'm sitting and talking to both of them, Dwight leans over and he says, "Hey, that guy sitting next to you," he says, "Carl, I'm talking to you." He goes, "Yeah, what about it?" He says, "You saved my career." And I go, "Wow, well, can you tell the story?" He says, "Yeah, I'll tell you the story." He says, "I'm first year or two in the big leagues, I'm doing everything great defensively, stealing bags, throwing people out, but I'm struggling at the plate. I'm really struggling at the plate." And he says, one night after the game, Carl comes over and sits next to me and he says, "Hey, Dewey, why don't you I got something you might want to try." So Dewey goes, what do you got? I mean, let me have it. He says, "When you go to the plate, sit on one pitch, whether it's fastball, curveball, change, sit on one pitch until you get 2 strikes. And you gotta sell out. You gotta sell out on that one pitch until you get 2 strikes." He said, "I started doing that." He said, "My career took off offensively." And I always use that. I use that with young players a lot. And at the minor league level, I remembered that story. And when I played, I did it. I didn't even know that I was doing it, but I was really big on sitting. And there were days Dwight would go, or there were days that I would sit soft. I would sit breaking ball because I knew who the pitcher was, and I knew that I was going to get a lot of breaking ball where I was hitting in the lineup, or I was going to get a lot of fastballs. So I tried to do my homework first, but I was prepared, and he said it really, really helped me. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, you gotta be able to look for something. You can't manage everything over the plate. You gotta pick and choose what you think you can handle, and you gotta be able to attack it. Sometimes a pitcher is gonna make their pitch, and you gotta tip your hat to them because you're saying, "Hey, that's a pitch I can't handle," and you go from there. I remember as a young guy watching Dwight Evans play. While we're talking about Dwight Evans, and one of the things that I remember specifically about him was he used to pigeon toe a lot, and both his feet, front foot would be pigeon toed in, back foot would be pigeon toed in, and I remember, and I talk about that sometimes with the kids that we were around, and I said, well, the front foot pigeon toed in because he wanted to keep himself closed, he didn't want to fly open, and then the back side was to help accelerate his trigger. And I don't know if that's true or not, because that's going back with my memory and watching Detroit Tiger baseball, but listening to the great Al Kaline talk a little bit about hitting and the approach, and that was what he was at least he was inferring that he was doing. Whether that was what he was doing or not, I don't know, but I think there's some truth to that.
Usually, Fred, the athletes that have some foot speed, have some running, galloping ability, and Dwight could run. It's amazing how many of those guys have a little slight pigeon-toed with their feet. Not only at the plate, but when they walk or when they run. it's just for some reason it makes them more efficient with their strides. And I've noticed that over the years, that hardly ever will I see a guy walking like duck-footed and have foot speed. You don't see that anymore or ever. So.
Well, certainly for a long time, he had probably the best arm in the American League.
No question.
Andre Dawson might have had the best arm in the National League during that time, which would have been in the 80s. And two plus arms. Although Jesse Barfield might have something to say about that.
Yeah, Dwight Evans Dewey was definitely one of the best. And I still think that he might have a shot at the Hall. We'll see what happens. Hopefully. He might get in there, look at his numbers, and the length of time that he played. And there's a lot of guys that they need to look at.
We're joined again by Orv Franchuk from his home in Mesa, Arizona, and we're talking baseball with Last Raps Baseball. So, Orv, when you go places, you usually bring things with you, and when you leave places, you take things with you. So when you left the Red Sox organization, what were some of the things that you took with you when you moved on to other organizations?
Wow, that's a great question. I not to brag, but I felt like I brought a lot because I brought the hitting process, the mental part of the hitting process with me from Oakland, because we started to spend a lot of time on that. Keith Lippman, Carl Keel, and Billy Bean. We started talking a lot about that and getting into that. So I felt like I brought that with me. But what did I take away? Oh, I took away is not so much of the knowledge but I took away that the game is a business. Baseball is a business. I felt like I give my heart and soul to the Boston Red Sox for the 4 years that I was there. And then it was really difficult for me to know that they were going to go in another direction. They decided that they wanted somebody else to do what I did. And so I don't know if that's a takeaway, but it was something that I had learned. And, you have to move on, and you have to, and just keep doing what you're doing. And so, I don't know, maybe being a better communicator in terms of communicating with front office people. I was kind of reluctant at times not to communicate with everybody on what I was doing with certain players. And so that it would be in the minds and in the forefront for the people making the decisions at the big league level and in the front office. And so I think maybe that might have been an area that I felt like I learned, and I got better at it as I went along. So that would have to be what I would have taken away from the time with the Red Sox.
You mentioned earlier that obviously the game has evolved in the last 25, 30 years with respect to the management. You got a lot of people that are in management that maybe haven't played the game, or maybe looking at the analytics or looking at the cybermetrics a little at a greater rate than maybe what people who are coaching and playing and in development have used. So again, that kind of begs the question: how do you try to connect with those folks who maybe played the game, but at the same time also communicate with baseball people in the front office, because there's going to be some people that aren't the brainiacs or the cybermetrics folks that are pushing that stuff. So I guess my question for you would be, how do you try to balance that?
That's a good question. I think you have to be able to try to teach both. So, for example, the analytic people needs to spend time with the people that are not that familiar with the analytics. So both ends need to teach each other. So the baseball grunts, the guys that are with the experience and spend all the time in the trenches, they need to come over to the analytics side and learn about the analytics part of it. And and then the analytical people need to come over to the baseball to the ground root side and learn about how to play the game and the mechanical part, the mental part, the visual part. I think when you have that kind of environment and that like a general manager, if he can create that and have staff and people on board that are all on that kind of a page, that's pretty powerful. But that always doesn't. That's not very common, and it takes a lot of work, and I mean, that's kind of all I need to say about that, because I mean, I know a lot of people that are on one side or the other, or and they have a hard time with the other. But they know that it has value. They both know that it has value, and they're trying to do what they can. It's kind of tough when you all of a sudden you're 65 or 70 years old. You've been a trench guy, and you've been the mechanical and the stuff that you go through, and all of a sudden now you got the analytics that come in, and it's not that you don't want it. It's just it takes a lot of work to learn it. How valuable it can be. Audiovisual. I mean, I've been a big audiovisual guy, and that was the other thing that I felt like I brought when I came from Oakland to the Red Sox was I had all my hitting coaches make sure that they spent time at least once a week with every position player, going over at bats. We recorded every single at bat in the minor leagues when I was there, and I started that. And the visual learning is, I mean, that's a lot of kids. You can talk to them all you want about what they're doing wrong, but when they can actually visually see it, or you can demonstrate it and show it to them physically, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, one of the things that, and you knew obviously with myself growing up near Detroit, being a Tiger fan, one of the things that organization lacks or has been behind on has been the analytics. But probably the one trade recently that stands out as a landslide analytic win was when the Atlanta Braves acquired shortstop Dansby Swanson, who was the number one pick in the draft, along with Edner Inciarte from Arizona. And the Braves sent Shelby Miller to the Diamondbacks, and there was, I think, another player involved. And it's just been a home run. You've got two starting positional players in the Atlanta lineup. You got Inciarte, who's arguably one of the best fielding center fielders in baseball. Swanson's turning into a solid everyday shortstop. But I think the one thing that, where you make the point about where the two sides have to be talking is they felt that the Arizona organization at that time didn't know how other teams were valuing their players. So it's like playing poker and the other guy can see your cards, but you can't see his cards. And so getting an understanding of how other teams value your assets was key. And I think that there was obviously a regime change in Arizona that put a few guys out of work after, that trade a year or two later. But certainly that's an emphasis of where both sides have got to have an understanding of each other when trades are being made or when there's development being done, I would think anyway.
Yeah, and the evaluation process that's a big part of it. And I mean, the evaluation process that's involved in a trade, when you're going to trade somebody for somebody else, there's a lot of work that should go into that, not just I want this guy because I've seen him. Last year he had a really good year, but but is he a good teammate? Is he a projectable guy? Does he have a good makeup? Is he going to be a guy that's going to fit in and be a big part of our club and make us better? There's, like I say, and the makeup for me is huge. I mean, and you ask most managers and coaches at every level, and in college baseball, high school, major leagues, they'll tell you how important it is to have makeup.
Well, that concludes our first interview with Orv Franchuk. I'd like to thank Orv for taking the time to chat with us this evening. If you'd like to know more about our guest, please be sure to check the item description below. We'll be doing another interview in the future with Orv, as well as other guests, including another interview with Ray Brown, and also with former Kansas City Royal minor leaguer Justin Adam. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. This has been another Last Raps Baseball video production.